Well, hello, folks, and welcome back to Texas Senate District 2. I'm Texas Senator Bob Hall, and we've been talking with you with the issues about COVID now for approaching 3 years. Began in early part of 2020 with the doctors and other folks later on that had experiences in the hospital, not getting the right treatment, being abused, otherwise taken advantage of, lied to, and everything imaginable. And along the way, I ran into a couple of fantastic people, Laura Bartlett and her partner in this, Jody Hassel, that came up with a clever idea of defense boxes, of putting together what Laura's brother, Dr. Richard Bartlett, who I'd been working with, and other doctors had come up with as preventative and early treatment for COVID that was effective and worked so well that everybody wanted to keep it off the market and out of the hands of individuals. But it did work well, and so asked them to come back on. We had discussions on the defense boxes here a while back. We talked a little bit about that. But the interesting thing that I'll be looking forward to hearing is their work in helping people get out of the hospitals. We did some when people would call, we'd figure out a way to try to help get better treatment, or get out of the hospital, go home. It was amazing how the hospitals would lie to people and pretend like they could refuse to let people out of the hospitals, and we knew that wasn't true. Matter of fact, I think there were many cases in which the hospitals could have been reported for kidnapping for what they did in keeping people there. And so, but their level, they've set up a thing called, as I understand it, a hostage hotline, and they got a phone number to call, and some people will help work their way out of the hospital or to another hospital, whatever it is. So rather than me talk about it, I'm going to let Laura Bartlett from West Texas, who had this clever idea, tell you all about it.
Oh, thank you, Senator. Thanks for doing this. Everything that you're my hero. So that has not changed in the last 2 years. So what's happened with this hospital situation is that a little backstory on me. I was helping my brother get the word out about what you could do to heal at home with inhaled budesonide, and that led to people were reaching out to him from everywhere, the four corners of the world, asking for help once they got into the hospital as well. You know, oh my gosh, what's happening? They're not doing anything that I'm asking to do. And so by proxy, because I was helping my brother, people were reaching out to me. And I kind of got brought into that whole world just osmosisly because of my association with my brother, helping him. And I just started doing it. I think actually we started helping before we got a defense box, which is a curated box of items that you could take at home, supplements, and a couple of tools were in there too, like a pulse oximeter. It measures your blood oxygen level on your finger so that you'd know if you were dangerously low. And then you would need supplemental oxygen. Anyway, it was a box of things that we had learned people needed, and we put that together. But I was already helping people with the hospital situation where they were literally feeling like hostages, and imminent doom was pending because they didn't know they had rights. They didn't know that they had any way of getting out of a hospital alive. And so they would reach out to me, and I started helping them. I've got a couple of people on the call that also have been in that situation. That like Greta's been in that situation. We met after the fact, after this hotline had already started. But Greta, did you want to explain why somebody needs a hostage hotline?
Before you get Greta in there, let me make a point for the folks that we had something happen during COVID that has never happened before, that incentivized the hospitals to hold people. And that is, the government stepped in and decided that remdesivir was a drug that should be used. There was no medical foundation for that. It was just the decision made. It was a fairly expensive drug, price range anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a dose for it. But in order to encourage hospitals to use that on patients, the government then added a 20% bonus payment to the hospitals for the entire hospital stay for people, which then encouraged them to keep people in the hospital longer than they needed to, and to keep people in the hospital that didn't even need to be there. And was an incredible incentive to use remdesivir, which was known to destroy the kidneys and other organs. The long story of how it had been taken off the market because it actually was killing more patients than it was healing during the Ebola scare. But they brought it back and were using it with total disregard for whether it was appropriate for the patient or not, whether it was needed or not, because it had that 20% bonus tied to it. The hospitals were making an incredible amount of money by forcing this on people, and then keeping them longer, putting them on respirators, and eventually moving to a ventilator before they sent them out in a hearse, stretching out the stay in the hospital, even if they were going to survive, as long as possible. And so that's where Laura and Jody was stepping in saying, hey, you know, you have rights. You have patients' rights. In Texas, we have patients' rights. They're not as good as they should be. They're going to get better after this next session with a bill, hopefully. But people needed to know. And so this is what Laura's talking about, that they started telling people what their rights were and how they could move out. So that is what has really helped a lot of people. And I think you're going to hear from some folks that they actually helped with this technique that they have.
Right. People prior to COVID, and there's still people now that don't know that they have the ability to say no. They get to choose what happens to their body. And sometimes you just need someone to, from the outside, not so emotionally tied to this crisis, you know, like we're not in it. We're advocates from the outside speaking into it and encouraging people and giving them tools to use going through the process. It's easier to say no. You would think it would be easy to say no to something that you've already made up your mind about, but there's a lot of pressure in the hospitals to convince you. We've had Jody and I were in a situation in Dallas with very good friends of ours that were literally told, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. I had a few people that are on this call on the phone with our friend. We had Ashley, who's she's not on the Zoom, but she's on the Zoom, but just the audio portion, not video. She's an ER, she has ER nursing experience. She was advocating directly with the nurses that were in the room with our friend. And we're literally hearing on an open call, you're going to die. You need to do this. You're going to die. You're going to die. If you don't do this, you need to be separated from your advocate.
Blackmailing her. If she didn't get this test, she didn't agree to go to the COVID ICU after this test, she wouldn't get the test. That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So, withholding things that as the consumer, the patient, you have a right to your test results. They were not releasing those test results. In this case, our friend turned out she had a pulmonary embolism, one of the largest pulmonary embolisms that UT Southwestern, a different hospital, took care of appropriately. She left this hospital because she had advocates strongly advocating, get out if you want to stay alive. She did. She left. She resisted the tyranny in that particular hospital. And she literally walked out. I believe she walked out probably in a hospital gown and with her bare butt showing, but she left. She can attest to that. And so she was whisked away. Her friend who was advocating on the scene was hauled out. She was manhandled by 2 security guards in the hospital. And I remember calling Senator Hall just at my wit's end. I remember you were probably in a meeting somewhere, Senator, and I said, this is the situation, we need help, you know, Mayday, Mayday. And you patiently listened. There wasn't much at the moment you could do in that crisis. This is how important advocates are, because we literally had 5 people on a conference call advocating. And this is the lengths they'll go to in some cases. I'm not saying all hospitals, some are good. They're few and far between. I'll say that right now, handling COVID. But they literally took the phone out of my friend who was the patient's hand, who was getting supplemental oxygen, disconnected the phone and walked across the room, and then called security and hauled out her advocate on the scene. And she made it out alive. I'll just say it turned out okay, but it was a 24/7 experience of being on the phone, advocating for her. It's in the moment. This is why the hotline is, because people don't know what they're getting themselves into. I know Samantha Hill was one of the first people that I helped, and she's on the Zoom call. Sam, do you want to talk about how you even got into advocacy yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my mom was hospitalized in August of last year in Odessa, Texas, which is where Laura and I are both from. We had, as a family, we had heard stories about, the hospitals and the hostage situations and things of that sort, but you hear about them and you don't think they're necessarily true. I mean, they're true, but they're not happening in your city or your community or whichever. And my mom was admitted with COVID and pneumonia. And sure enough, she went in and they immediately started her on remdesivir. And within 24 to 48 hours, the fight was on. I realized immediately that they would not listen to me. They were violating her rights, her wishes, we couldn't get anywhere. I mean, we were hitting a brick wall. They were suspending her visitation rights for me trying to go up there and advocate for her, even though I was never even seeing her. They were punishing her and punishing me for trying to advocate for her. It was gut-wrenching. It was horrible. And we reached out. We had a friend that knew Laura. He gave us her contact info, and Laura just so graciously shared so much information with me and worked with me and my family throughout the whole process of, she was so great, because we would call her and say, this is what they said now. And she's like, not true. And, and we would go back, and in my own time, I was spending my evenings, doing research about laws and, patients' rights and, things of that sort. And I really dived into it. And I always joke, and I've said it on some other calls, that I don't think that my local hospital knew what to do with me. They didn't see me coming, because I'm kind of a bulldog, and I went for them, and I did, and I went in there, but I wouldn't have known anything if it wasn't for Laura. And with all of that being done, thank God, we ended up saving my mom's life. She did 18 days in the hospital. To the very end, it was a battle. They continuously gave her remdesivir when I told them not to. She ended up getting, I think, 5 doses of that. She has medical issues to begin with, but all the way to the end, even in the end, they told her she was going to die. She was on 4 liters of oxygen. She couldn't leave. She was going to die. They told her they wouldn't send her home with oxygen. So she was calling me terrified. She was going to leave there with no oxygen. It was the worst time of my life, the worst time for our family. And with that, I just knew that I had to help other people. I knew that this was happening. If it was happening here, it was happening everywhere. And, I just, with the help of Laura, we just went in and, I just started helping people. And, I shared my story on social media. It's been shared thousands and thousands of times. And, I filed complaints with the hospital board, the nursing association, everyone. The Joint Commission, they can't get away with this. And as people, humanity, our communities, like, we have to step up and we have to stop this. I think all the time, just because COVID has died down doesn't mean that these doctors and these hospitals got away with killing people. The month that my mom was in the hospital in August, over 50 people died from COVID, and they didn't have to. And I live in a very small community, and that's not okay. And it upsets me every single day that people are still getting sick in my community, whether it's COVID or anything else, and they're going to these hospitals and being treated by doctors that have zero moral compass. And, they took an oath to defend and protect people, and that's not what they're doing. And, I just, like I said, as a community and as individuals, we have to continue the fight and step forward. And hopefully all in due time, these people will be punished and will be held accountable for what they've done. But, we have to keep spreading the word and putting these things out there. And then, as you had mentioned, Senator, with monkeypox or, whatever is next, there's going to be other things. And there's still people that are in the hospitals that are denied their rights for whether it's cancer or anything else. And so, we've got to step up and help people fight, because not everybody has that bulldog mentality, and they're vicious in a hospital. They will beat you down. They want you beat down. They want you to cower down and give in, and to trust them, and it doesn't work out that way anymore, unfortunately.
No, you're absolutely right. And the beat down and doing that is in order to keep you there, keep the person there as long as possible, administer as many drugs as possible for that big bonus that they get. And and there is no doubt in my mind at all, after having talked to, I mean, I can't imagine how many people we've talked to, and I know you all have too, that the overwhelming majority of the people who died in the hospital did not die of the COVID. They died because of hospital policy. It was the hospital policy, and what they did or didn't do actually killed the people. It was not the COVID. And I was glad to hear that you did one thing that I'm going to suggest again before it's over with, that everybody that's listening to this that has a similar experience, don't let it go unreported. The more this is reported to the hospital, Health and Human Services, the TMB, the Texas Nurses Board, wherever it is, it's not easy. It's a lot of work, but our office will help you. We'll put up a number at the end here that you can call, and we can give you guidance on how to submit the complaints. But the more complaints that we can have submitted, the better the chances are that we can avert this in the future, because they're going to continue with it. It's a new norm for the hospitals. There used to be a benevolent place where you went to for healing. It is now a business center where you go to make profit for the hospital, and the patient's well-being doesn't even make the top 10 of the things of their objectives these times. They're just an incidental on their way to profit. And so appreciate what you had to say, Sam, and I'm sure that we get others to follow up with filing complaints on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and can I build on that,
Sure.
Senator? I'm on the phone, and hopefully I'll get my words together. I'm on the tail end of a migraine, so I'm not in pain, but I'm kind of foggy. But basically, what Samantha said was excellent, and I just want to add to that the manipulation that we've seen, that Laura and I have experienced when calling these hospitals. Because Laura will get me on the phone with somebody, and Laura and Samantha are both an ace. Like they're amazing. Samantha has her own company, the Patient Playbook. And she gave up what she was doing in her livelihood. Things that we've seen when we've been on phone calls is really, it's, they have that protection over the hospitals where you can't sue them if your family dies from COVID. We're all in an emergency here. But the things we've seen haven't had anything to do with COVID. One of the callers that called in, their mother, they're like, you're going to have to look at hospice. You're going to have to look at hospice for your mom. And the family was all sad and coming in from out of state, the ones that were out of state. And they call a day later and said, oh, she got Ativan. And they were giving her Ativan and basically decreasing her drive to breathe. They gave her morphine. She had a coughing attack. They gave her Ativan and morphine. And because of a coughing attack, her O2 sats dropped because this woman isn't a drug addict. There's no reason to give Ativan and morphine. So they decreased her drive to breathe, and her O2 sats dropped because she's already dealing with COVID and lung inflammation and already having a hard time breathing. And they just knocked out her drive to breathe and then say, we need to get hospice. So what we did was we said, no, I confronted her, and so did Barb. That's Laura's sister. She's a nurse. She's also an attorney, and has helped tremendously with my own case with my own mother. That's how we all met. It was amazing though, like they just kept one thing after another. So they took the Ativan and morphine away, and I can't remember what 2 drugs they put her on, but they had another fit of coughing or something, and they gave her even stronger central nervous system depressants, and stronger, I think it was Precedex and something else, I can't remember. They just snowed her out, decreased her drive to breathe. She ended up dying because they kept believing the doctors, and I'm not putting them down, but I think that's a really big thing. Like, the doctors will come in with a smile and be like, we're so sorry. They're giving, like, it's, if you saw someone holding a knife up to your family member's neck saying, oh, we really don't want them to die. Great, take the knife down. Take the knife down then. Like that, we all know. But because people are not educated, they're not a medical professional. That's not their fault. Like you said, you used to be able to trust them. And I know it's not every doctor, and I know it's not every nurse or every respiratory therapist, but there is financial gain. And what we've seen is that if they can't do the remdesivir, even Breck, who's on the phone right now, her grandmother, Breck is really smart. Breck was in nursing school as well. And she's really smart and very thorough and took notes and documented everything. And she sent us a picture and said, they're finally giving antibiotics to my grandma. And the antibiotic they were giving is vancomycin. So hard on the kidneys. So it's like, if they can't damage it with remdesivir, they're doing it with vancomycin. They'll find another way. If they can't do remdesivir and vanc, like our one patient that had called into us for advocacy, then they're doing it through morphine, Ativan. Let's decrease the drive to breathe. So I just wanted to say that as well. They're looking at different ways, and if they can't do it that way, they'll withhold normal things. Like when I'm sorry if I'm rambling here, but my own mother, when she was in the hospital, that's how I met Laura, through Samantha and then to Laura. And I just thought, because my mom went downhill pretty quick and I never saw her so sick. And I thought, Mom, let's just get some basic measures. We won't do any of their stuff. We're not doing their protocol. They over oxygenated her. They went from 3 liters of oxygen to a face mask, full of non-rebreather face mask, 15 liters of oxygen, and, which I've never seen before, they're doubling this up. We've seen this with the people that call in as well. They put an oximeter on her, high flow oxygen, 13 to 15 liters. And so they kept, and I said, well, start weaning her down. Well, we can't. Well, when one of our family members went in there for the hour visit a day, we would take the oxygen off her. She did fine on room air. When we pulled her out of the hospital, in 30 hours, actually just taking her from the hospital room down to my car, we took her from 13 liters of oxygen down to 5. I put her on 5 in my car. And they're telling me the whole week, we can't wean her. We had her off oxygen in 30 hours after getting her on budesonide. And we had her weaned off. She's healed. Same thing, they told it to Samantha's mom, your mother will always be on oxygen if she lives. They were trying to send her to a long-term care facility. I said, no, absolutely not. And that's important for people to know, because we just say, well, oxygen will help. Oxygen, if you don't need it, will kill your drive to breathe. In general layman's terms, without going into the science, you give someone too much oxygen, your brain goes, we have too much oxygen, slow down the breathing. Well, no, give the proper amount of oxygen to supplement and support them. And we've had this even with simple cases. We have family friends, I have family friends that were on just a nasal cannula, just 1 liter of oxygen, and he was 91%. He took the oxygen down, he popped right up to 96%. He was not as sick as my mother, his wife, the same story. So there's a lot of things like that they're doing, or over-medicating with Solumedrol, which is a great, like a IV prednisone, let's say. It's great for certain things, but you have to monitor for prednisone psychosis. They're dosing people so high with a systemic steroid. People are going into prednisone psychosis. I can say that because the night nurse, when I told my mother, she's got to come off of this, she said, oh, they all get that way. All the COVID patients get that way. I said, I kept that to myself and thought, well, I guess this is why. They're losing their minds, and, you can recover. You just have to wean off. But how is a COVID patient supposed to make a good decision for themselves? They don't have their family member there, and then they're putting them in a psychosis. Elderly and females are especially at risk. And you are irritable, you're insomnia, you're climbing out of your bed, you're anxious. It's miserable. Never mind the heart and nausea stuff that my mom had going on as well from too much prednisone. So I just wanted to point all that stuff out too, and I'll let someone else take the floor. There's a lot of manipulation going on.
Right. Can I just jump in there real quick? That was Ashley, and people probably are wondering, what do you get if you call a hotline or an advocate? You get a team. It's not just Laura Bartlett. Laura Bartlett's just like an air traffic controller. I'm like, my background is producing, executive producing live shows. So in media and media relations, I just know how to connect people. I mean, I know patient rights, and I know what I've learned in the last 2 years, osmosively with my brother, who's a frontline COVID doctor and ER doctor, and my sister, who's a RN and a attorney. I'm none of those things. I'm not a doctor, a nurse, or attorney, but I know how to connect people. And so you get a team. I assemble a team. I get the lawyer, involved. I get who knows the rights and how to assert them. I get somebody who's part of a former hospitalist who was in the director level of a huge hospital chain in Houston involved, and she knows what pushes buttons and gets things done. She knows what they care about and how to leverage what she's done for 30 years as a career for people to take action on behalf of the patient, not the hospital. And so I get a team of people and a nurse, a nursing background, ER nurse with Ashley. And these people are just automatically available at any time of day. It's amazing, even with Ashley and the occasional migraine or whatever else is going on in her life. Everybody's got busy lives, and we're all just doing this to help people. Sam stopped her life, and she's helping people. This is what you get. You get a team, and you do need a team. In the case with Jody and my friend in Dallas, like I said, we had 5 people. I think we had two of them were actual patients that had been through the system, the meat grinder, and came out on the other side. And it still was difficult getting her out alive. Running out of the hospital barefoot, bare butt in a hospital gown. It was still hard. So anyway, I just wanted to explain kind of what this means, this hotline. And then I'm going to turn it over to Erica. I know that you I got you last minute to jump in. We got people on the call from all over America. Erica, where are you from, and what was your experience?
Hi there. Thank you for asking me to come on this today. It's been interesting. It's not really the best word to say, but just to know that really everything I've heard about and then what I experienced, it's all true, and it's very sad, and it's nice to know that there's people that are advocating and helping. And thank you, Laura, and everybody else.
You're welcome.
That was on your team, let's just say. That worked with us, my brother and I. And so my father was in the Nevada system, hospital system. And unfortunately, he went in, his situation was a little bit different because he had the pacemaker put in, which we believed caused him to have severe hiccups. And they did say he had COVID. He had a hard time breathing because he had passed out before he got the pacemaker. He had passed out. They said his heart was beating irregular, and he broke a couple ribs. They put the pacemaker in. He had severe hiccups and broken ribs, and he was they sent him home. He said he didn't want any COVID protocol. The hospital said, well, then you can go home. They actually sent him home. My dad he wouldn't take remdesivir. He said, absolutely not. He told all the nurses, no, I do not want it. So they sent him home, and he was a caretaker of his mother, my grandmother, who's 100. Anyway, nobody else appeared to have gotten COVID. But anyway, his oxygen levels had declined because of the hiccups, the severe hiccups from the pacemaker. Well, we're assuming it was the pacemaker. I can't confirm that. I've been told that was not the case. But anyway, he went through the system on lockdown. We couldn't see him. I think the biggest thing for us right off the bat with Laura and your team was that we didn't realize the rights that we did have because they put such resistance up, and we just feel you think that they're in the hospital and they're going to do what they can for your loved one to help, get your loved one home. But that was definitely not the case. They were telling us mixed signals. They wouldn't communicate. They weren't doing anything we had asked. They said it was not protocol, nothing but remdesivir. And they put him on the ventilator. They said that was the only hope with remdesivir. That's what they told us as well. He will die if he doesn't get those two things right off the bat. They gave him dexamethasone, the steroid, and but they just wouldn't work with us in any way, and they would barely tell us what doses they were giving and how much and things like that. It was very difficult. And then of course, isolation, so no visitation, and that was a solid 2 weeks. So it was pretty rough, but that was the first time we'd been through something like this. And if we didn't have Laura, you guys to talk with, to even try new things, we would never have known, even questions to ask, that we had those rights to, a number of things throughout that whole 2 weeks period. So that was really helpful to us. Unfortunately, we didn't get our father out. He did pass away. So, but I think knowing that we did all that we could and we fought, and we didn't just sit back and let them do whatever they wanted, is without us pushing back, I could say. I mean, they didn't do what we asked. Of course, they did what they wanted, but we were engaged and we were trying to fight for them. And that made us feel that we gave 100%, even though we just really didn't know what we were doing other than what advice we had gotten from you guys, if that makes any sense. I just, it's a really sad situation, and it's really happening. And I think that was, I think all of these stories that we're hearing, we're another situation, and all of these horrible things that are happening. It's not okay. I know that there's several, I have some, nurse friends that have worked in ICU, and they're getting very, some of them are getting extremely upset and conflicted on what they thought they were getting into. And they've been working in the field for years, and they're very conflicted on how to move forward through a lot of these things, because they're not, it's not a practice anymore. It's a protocol, and it's hard. So I would like to keep moving forward and fighting, and actually making sure that we're just not lying down and saying, well, that's the end of that. He's my father passed away, move on. We can't do that. It's just, that's not the action that we need to take. So I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Erica.
If
Thank
I
you.
could just say something to Erica real quick though, and I just want to let her know that, we're super proud of you, because it's not easy. It is not easy to get in there and do what you guys did. And you're absolutely right. You guys did everything that you can. And I just want to let you know that, we see you and we are proud of you and proud of what you guys did. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you. Your story it's pretty amazing what you've accomplished also. It's great to hear. So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, Erica said something important: know your rights. They didn't know their rights until they got talking with Laura and all of us, and that's very important, because the doctor is supposed to tell you the risks and benefits. They're supposed to tell you every option that you have, and then you get to pick, because it's your body and that's your right.
They're also supposed to tell you if it's a financial gain. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's the risk, the benefits, and if there's a financial gain to the doctor and to the hospital.
Oh, wow.
And no one's disclosing that. So when you go into the hospital, just as Ashley's saying, I'm sorry I hijacked this, but yeah, they're not telling you your rights. They're not telling you your options, and they're undoubtedly not telling you about the financial gain that they're receiving, the hospital and the physician, for doing certain treatments and medications and keeping you in the hospital. So that's your legal right there. So,
Well, it's informed consent, and none of us were giving that.
Yep.
Right.
So,
Yeah, Greta, tell your story.
well, my situation, and I can't stress this enough, people need to be aware and they need to educate themselves, but they have to remain vigilant because things are changing. And just like you said, people are catching on to remdesivir. Well, they're finding other ways to kill a patient. And so that's what it means to be vigilant. You have to stay on top of this. And like for me, I had learned about the vax. I wasn't going to get that. I had learned about the ventilators. They weren't going to put me on that, but I'd never heard of remdesivir. I thought I had researched everything. And I also did what we are all taught to do, which was to give our health over to someone else and let them control it. And that's not what we should be doing either. We should be understanding what's going on and it's hard. I know it's hard for people to do that, especially when you're incapacitated. And that's part of their goal. When I went in there, I couldn't breathe. I had 66% oxygen. When my oxygen level finally got up and they got me stabilized, I'm like thinking I'm going to go home. Well, they're already administering the remdesivir before I even know it in the ER. And that was a planned thing because then, your loved ones are kept away. So it's a process of keeping isolation and making sure that patient is so incapacitated that they're not going to be able to fight for themselves. And I'm telling you, that first dose of remdesivir, it's worse than a doozy because at that point, I couldn't have fought for myself. And the only reason I'm alive is God himself, because I prayed, and that's the only reason why I'm alive today. And the fact that my husband was allowed in there and he was able to be with me and give me that hope and comfort. But from after I got out and realized what happened and started the website Protocol Kills, I got all these stories and they were terrible. I mean, just beyond terrible. And the manipulation it's just evil. There is no other explanation than to say that it's sheer evil. These people are, they're so mentally broken down when their loved one is physically broken down and they cannot function. And then the hospitals are so manipulative when they are functioning and they're saying, okay, we got to get this patient out of here. We got to get my dad out of here. We got to get my mom out of here. And we're going to move him to a new hospital. And they get all the plans ready. And the doctors say, okay, well, they're stable. Just go home and get some rest. And they take a turn for the worse in the night. They always take a turn for the worse before they're shipped to another hospital. There's no coincidence in that. I have 150 stories, and too many of them are just, I call it a slightly different variation of the same crime, because it's a crime. And all of these people that have lost loved ones, they want justice so bad, and they are seeking it left and right and trying to just grab on to any attorney that will take their money. And what I try to tell them is, right now, we need to expose the evil and not be worried so much on financial compensation, because that's not going to bring your loved one back. And in the process, until justice is served, let's save some people's lives. Yes. Let's get out there and make awareness and make people understand that you cannot give your health over to somebody else. We need to stop giving our education of our kids to other people. We need to stop giving our rights to other people. We need to start to be aware of everything that goes on around us, and your health should be number one, because if you don't have that, then you have nothing. The hotline helps with that. People are so disoriented when they contact me. All they are is just stricken with fear, and they're like, what do I do? And so the fastest, quickest thing I can do, because I can tell them to go look on the website. It's all over the website, but I don't know if they're not thinking properly or it's just too much at one time. But if you have a number there, and you just shoot them that number and say, here, call this. It's like, that's so much easier. It's so much less stress to them, and they call your number and they get the help they need.
Right. I think it's the reason why I started the hotline was I got to thinking we have a hotline for everything. If someone's breaking into your house in the middle of the night, you automatically know to call 911. There needed to be like a 911 number. Unfortunately, you couldn't call the police to get you out of your hostage situation. They're not going to help. So something new needed to be created. And that's why the hospital hostage hotline it needed to be easy for people to implement, because you're very stressed. Everybody on this call knows what it's like to be in a crisis situation. You can't think at your best when you're going through something that feels life and death. So thank you for saying that. And Greta has a lot of experience with what's going on in the world. She deals with people's stories of hospital hostage situations, whether they came out the way optimally that they lived through it, or unfortunately people have passed. But she gets these stories almost every day. And how many stories have you processed through your website, Greta? Protocolkills.com.
150 right now. But I have over 280 people that have signed up for legal, wanting legal contact. And I save that. And when someone comes along able to help them, I will be glad to pass that along. But right now, there's really nothing we can do. And I don't want these people to become victims again. So once again, vigilance is the key. You have to question everything. Don't think this is just happening in our healthcare system, because whenever there's an opportunity, there's an opportunistic person ready to take advantage of it. And don't think that once you're a victim, it's over with, because they can victimize you again. We have to be vigilant.
Right.
Absolutely. And one of the things you got to be careful about, and I'm glad you mentioned this, Greta, is that unfortunately here in Texas, the way the law is written, and unfortunately SB 6 that was passed this last session, have pretty much made doctors and hospitals bulletproof for lawsuits. There is very, very little that a doctor can do. And if it's tied to COVID, there is nothing anybody can do. There is no such thing as malpractice, malfeasance, nothing. It is here in Texas. Other states have different laws. And so I would warn people, be very, very cautious of talking to any attorney that says, hey, I think this will make a good lawsuit. I can win. I can go after them. I can win this. Be very, very careful.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Because there are a lot of them out there that will lead you into believing that they can do something. And right now, the best thing that anybody can do to take action to correct this is to report the hospital to the Health and Human Services in Texas, in Austin. Report the doctors to TMB. I have no love or respect for TMB, but God does put some things on this earth that allows them here that are evil for his own good. And the TMB is basically an evil organization, but there is some good that could come out of it, and that is using them, these doctors, reporting, because when you do report, they've got to investigate it.
Yep.
And so, and it's the same with the nursing board and the pharmacy board, if pharmacy, all of them. We can just report them, and if we get enough of that, it will change some of this behavior.
Right.
So,
and I'd just like to say that I have links to every state reporting agency for doctors and nurses in all 50 states on the website. And we're so fortunate to have Senator Hall in Texas.
Yes.
But as I started this, I realized that at first I thought it was just that hospital. Then I thought it was the Houston area. Then I thought it was Texas. Then it didn't take me long to figure out this is all over the United States. And the same with the hotline. That Laura's working with people all over the United States. So I thank you for being in Texas, Senator Hall.
And the website you're talking about is what? What is it?
Protocolkills.com.
Protocol kills.
Mm-hmm.
Protocol singular kills.
Yes. Yes. And I did that intentionally because there are some protocols like budesonide that heal. So we can't label all protocols as lethal, but the ones that the hospital uses, that is the protocol that is the killer.
Right.
Yes. And what is the phone number for hotline?
Spelled out. I don't think people can remember. C888 C19. So that's C19 emergency spelled out. If you'll just remember that, because it's the EMER, what that spells out.
Okay.
And we have the graphic
Like
online too. If they go to the website, it's on the first page. Well, it's on a lot of pages actually. And it has the numbers written out and it has the words too.
Okay.
And I just wanted to add one thing to what Greta said about how they will find a way to kill you. They will find a way to kill you, because I cannot tell you how many people we have helped where they were getting ready to get released because they did get the protocol that worked, and something happened. And I would like to read this text message from a guy that Sam and I were trying to help, and his dad was doing great. He was getting ready to get released, and all of a sudden I didn't hear from him for a week. And I said, "How's your dad?" And he said, "So dad passed away early Wednesday morning. He was doing great. He was down to 6 liters of oxygen, out of bed, exercising, looking forward to being discharged from the hospital. We had oxygen meds, Synergy Home Health, all set up at home for him to come home. Friday night at 11:30, a respiratory therapist did not connect his humidifier cup to his oxygen correctly. So he was without oxygen until 4 a.m. the next morning. No one picked up on his dropping oxygen sats until he alerted staff because he was so short of breath and figured out nothing was coming through his nasal cannula. Oxygen sats at the 60 to 70s by the time they put oxygen back on him. After this, he drastically declined until he died Wednesday morning. Hospital staff doctors never wanted to address the issue or even document it. Seems like a big cover-up." This has happened. This kind of stuff had happened over and over and over. After they would agree to do the protocol, then they would figure out a way to make sure that patient never left the hospital.
Is that here in Texas, Jody?
Yep. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't. That was in Ohio.
Okay.
So, and I can try to find the name of the hospital. And he might have, I know he's gone to Protocol Kills, Greta. I don't know, and he wants to do something about it, but that's, like you said, Bob, like, I don't know what kind of avenue they have to get any sort of relief.
Really quick, Breck, the situation where you reached out to a hotline and
Yeah, so my mom gave me a call, said we're taking grandma to the hospital right now. She lives 5 hours away from me in Washington State near Spokane. I told my mom, do not let them administer remdesivir, and so that's all that they know. So my mom takes her in. At that moment, I was like, okay, well, now we need to figure out what to do. And I knew because I have an ER doctor as a friend. She's like, literally everybody that comes in here, if they have COVID, they will die if I send them upstairs. And so I was like, okay, so I knew we got to do something. So I found a video, not on YouTube, on a different platform that doesn't censor as much. And at the bottom of it had the link to protocolkills.com. I don't even remember the video. I found Protocol Kills. I emailed Greta. I called the number that was listed, and then within a couple hours, Laura called me back. I missed the call, and I was like, oh, wow. So within moments, I was able to get connected. And I hadn't found them until my grandmother had already been in the hospital for like a day and a half, I think it was, by the time I had like done enough research and taken it seriously enough. And so at that point, I felt like, when you hear the truth and they give you here, budesonide, these other things, and they're listing out the plan of action that works, and you hear that truth, it's like, it sets right in your spirit. It's like, okay, we are going to fight for this now. And so from my experience of, trying to convince my mom, so no one could be with my grandmother. And so we were just like, Grandma, answer your phone when we call you in the hospital, and connecting with Ashley and Laura and Dr. Bartlett. We got to have all of us on the call. It was like, I had to stroke. I was the one to try to ask for budesonide on behalf of my grandmother. And the doctor was saying, no, it's not going to work. We need to put her on comfort care and move by this time in there. And I was like, I said to the doctor on the phone, I have recorded it. I said, if this is the last option and you're telling me to move her to comfort care, why would you not try this very last thing? It's her dying wish. Meanwhile, my grandmother is, okay, so she was on 50 liters flow at that point, and they were like, it was like, when she got into the hospital, it was like they went from 0 to 10, just everything that they can to get her just down as fast as possible. And so she had said, we don't want her on a ventilator and all this. And so it was the last ditch effort before the ventilator. So the doctor agrees to do budesonide. We get her on budesonide. Within 30 hours, my grandma's all the way down to 10 liters of oxygen from comfort care. So at that point, we're like, okay, get her out, because we knew at that point I can maintain 10 liters at home. Like, I can do that. We can continue this. So, but again, what everyone has been saying, last ditch effort, so my mom, I'm like, okay, we got to prepare to get her out, like, secretively, so that they don't try to pull a fast one. Well, the last day my mom was allowed to go in because now grandma's been in there long enough. She no longer tests positive for COVID. It's pneumonia. And so my mom is in there with her, and my mom calls me and says, Breck, okay, I'm an hour away from the hospital. This is a small town. She's like, get the oxygen tanks ready and get over here. We're going to get her out right now. Like, I can tell, like, they've been starting to administer some things in her IV that I'm not aware of. So we get over there. My mom comes downstairs to get the oxygen tanks. She goes back upstairs within 10 minutes, and the nurse is in there. They had disconnected the IV my mom had before she left. The nurse is putting something back in there. And we're like, wait, what's going on? It was like, it just felt like we were in a sci-fi movie. I'm like, are you for real? Like, you're this last ditch effort. Like, it's so real. And the biggest thing that I just want to encourage everyone, whoever listens to this, is, reach out for help, and then be confident in and ask yourself, does that truth that you're hearing, does it feel right? Does it feel, and rest on that, lean into it. And it's scary, but you've got to trust the people that are speaking life into you from their experience. And that's why this hotline thing is huge, because again, as Greta said, yes, it was all on the website, but I was just like, this website, who created this? I don't know, I didn't even know where the creators of it, I didn't know you guys were in Texas or where you were from. And so to be able to speak to somebody on the phone and have a peace of mind and feel encouraged to know, okay, so the fact that we got grandma out, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was like such a fight to get her out of there. And she cried the night that she got home. She cried and said, they were trying to kill me. The fact that because the doctor saying we need to put her on comfort care, it's my grandmother standing next to the doctor and nobody's in the room with her. And it's like, and she goes, the fear that came over me in that moment of like, this is the only person in this room and she's telling me death sentence.
Yes.
While eating my breakfast. I mean, she's like not even so bad that she can't. So it was just, that's my biggest thing of like, get the help. And I'm so passionate about all of these women that have just been really emotionally charged and passionate about this, is because that's what we need. We need those bulldogs to come to the table and say, hey, get confident, because there are people that are not confident. And since this has happened, I went back to my ER doctor. I said, try budesonide in our ER here in where I live in Washington State. So she's been administering budesonide to patients that come to the ER before she sends them upstairs. And then she's been able to prescribe them the budesonide and other things, and then get them back out. So she doesn't send them upstairs. She's sending them back out the front door before she's like, it's a death sentence if you go up there. So
Awesome.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Passionate.
Wow. Wow.
Thank
What
you,
a
Frank.
story. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And that's, it's nothing like having a story with a happy ending.
Yeah.
At the end, there have not been many of these that have had happy endings, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
But grandma, she did pass away a week later after being at home, but she had AFib. There's a lot more details. She had AFib, and we believe she passed away of a stroke because she was at 92% oxygen. She was doing amazing on budesonide and everything else that Dr. Bartlett had prescribed. And then it was after a birthday party where all of our family was together that night, she took a turn and her left side of her body was no longer functioning and she couldn't communicate. So it ended poorly. But as far as that week, and had I been able to get her out of there sooner and had the confidence and to even know that she, had COVID earlier on, she had COVID for 16 days before she even went to the hospital. So she was telling us, and that's the other thing, is like COVID isn't really a painful disease, and so it's like, if you are having a hard time breathing or you're having, it's like that, you need to be doing something. You need to be on something. She was on nothing. So, but it was an incredibly happy ending. And I'm so thankful for that last week that I had. And I think, my grandmother knew where she was going. I think she kind of did it on purpose, honestly. Like now looking back, retrospective, I'm like, she had printed out her life insurance policy and set it on her desk before she even left for the hospital. There's a lot of things, but
Right.
but again, I'm just so blessed and honored to know that we're part of this group that's advocating for voices. And if you don't have a strong voice, find one
Right.
and let them speak on your behalf.
Thank-
Other than that, thank you guys so much for coming on tonight. And the folks that are watching this, if you really understood what's happening here and appreciate this, share this with as many people as you can, because people need to know what's really happening out there, and they need to know there's hope, that there's help out there. There are folks who understand how the hospitals work now that can help get you through the system, understanding that patients do have rights. And hopefully this next session, the legislature of Texas is going to make those rights even stronger. We did manage to get one bill passed this last session, which prohibits the hospital from refusing a patient's right to visitation by a counselor, a religious counselor. It's not a pastor, it's not a priest, it's not a rabbi. It meant to be anyone, and they cannot put any restrictions on it. Time-wise, you can have a visitor, and it does not have to be the same visitor all the time. Some of the hospitals have tried to read things into the bill. We will tighten that up and fix that next time, because there is no limit to the evil that's in the hospitals that we're going to. They are no longer the benevolent organizations they used to be. The patient is the last person on their list of things they're concerned about. Their number one concern is the money to be made, and it's reflected in the number of deaths that have happened and will continue to happen. While COVID may be on the wane, there is something else waiting in the wings. So government is working very hard to find something else to be able to continue its heavy-handed control of the population. So I think you guys will have that hotline. Will have another application coming up here real soon, whether it's going to be monkeypox or something else, but there's something coming. And I just thank you guys.
Thank you.
Being here first.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can help a whole lot more people. In the
Thank you so
meantime,
much,
Bob.
God bless you. God bless America. God bless Texas.